Now, let me know if I need it because I can't see myself what that looks like. It is Monday. RawMikeRichards.com. Broadcasting live from 234 King Street East, the Pacific Junction Hotel. And here's a little, what they like to call, foreshadowing. That is the last time I will call it that. Today is the last time I'm saying that. Tomorrow, there will be a different name for this studio for a very exciting reason. I'm just hitting all the posts today. This is going to be a very full show. There's certainly enough to talk about. NFL weekend kicks off. We'll go through the passes and fails, and the ones that failed, they really failed. Also, it just, in this current, look at this thing. It's just the way that this has happened, where we've seen sort of the devastation of natural disaster and the devastation that we thought was coming in Florida. We managed to avoid that one. So I know there were a lot of loved ones. And you just think about it, Dave. The nature of Florida is for people when they retire, or at least vacation, or spend half a year, or permanently move. Florida is almost central to not only most of the United States, but a large part of Canada. A lot of people have friends, family, whether it's the grandparents or, your parents who have retired, or they spend half a year, they're a snowbird. It just affected a lot of people. When you think of the number of universities that have football programs, that's why a lot of times it doesn't matter what the league is, whether it's the CFL or the NFL, most of those guys have a tie to Florida. Either they're from there, they live there, they played their football collegiately in that state. So there was a lot of distraction, of course, regarding this past weekend. And then let alone what happened in Houston, where we'll talk about that game, where Jacksonville, still, I don't believe they're allowed to leave, Dave. I think Jacksonville literally has to stay. They couldn't leave after the game.
No, not after the game, and for good reason, right? It will pass in the next 24 to 48 hours, and then we'll see what actually happens, the after effects of everything, because that's the key thing here. Jaguars, by the way, are expected to play at home next weekend. Still not sure whether or not that game is going to go through or not, but nonetheless, Florida as a whole, it could have been a lot worse. There still is a lot of mess. It still wreaked havoc in the billions of dollars of damage and so forth. But when you're reducing a Category 5 to a 2,
right, massive.
That's very good for everybody in Florida, and hopefully that 2 becomes just a tropical storm.
It's important, and I think it is now. I think technically now it's a tropical storm. Now we'll get to some of those pictures as well. But of course, this also, as we fall on a Monday, 9/11, and yet another anniversary. And for those that recall probably one of the worst days in the history of the United States, I don't know if there was a worse day. And if I want to talk about, if you're going back to the Civil War, you really would have to go back historically to find something that was as bad as that was. I don't think there's an equivalent. I don't believe. Certainly in modern day, there's nothing close to what happened on that day. And most of us remember where they were on 9/11, because your heart still goes out to all the families who lost so many, including all those first responders, all the firefighters, policemen, and those just trying to help out. So many died, and then those that died in such a horrific fashion on international television. As we sat there and in something that was so surreal, I can tell you that at the time I was back again at TSN Team 1050.
Team 1050.
It was the Team 1050. It was myself and Paul Romanek were on the air. And as this happens, just before about 10 minutes to 9, we see a plane go into the building. Now, because it was a national network, at that time, we had to be out at a specific time, just like it is in television. Like, there's no going over. It's not like radio. It's
right.
not,
yeah, you're across the country.
Yeah, we had to get out. And Romy was really good at directing traffic, and he was just saying, here we've just seen that because there was no explanation. Now, what had happened in that month? There was a bunch of crazy stuff, including Air Transat, running out of gas.
Yep.
Like the Air Transat, historically, you're looking for a punchline. There was. So I am trying to get in. Seriously, I'm trying to get in an Air Transat line. I'm trying to do a joke because we don't know what it is. We've never seen it, and I'm literally trying to get something in that I thought might be humorous. I can't believe it. And Romy stops me from doing it because I would have been historically one of the worst guys in the world.
In the world, yeah.
Because I not that I'm not in the running. I'm in there somewhere, Dave. But I just couldn't imagine if I actually got at what I was going to say.
Yeah.
And then as we watch it collapse and as the day goes on, there's this heaviness. And then you start thinking about all those that you know in the States. And I have many friends. And here's the one that was really, really difficult. Chris May, who you might know from the Weather Network, his brother was in the financial world, and he worked in the World Trade Center.
Wow.
And so when it dawned on me what had happened, I started to really freak out. And then, of course, boom, the next plane goes in. And now, I'm pretty upset. I'm shaking.
Okay, so this next plane goes in, which was, about 20 minutes later, 25 minutes? Where were you at that time? Are you guys off the air at 9 o'clock?
We're off the air. And Gene Velitis and Brian Henny, as he was known, they're on the air. Actually, I saw Gene tweet about it on Facebook he was on for the next, 6 hours probably.
Okay, so basically, and it happens all the time with radio, after the radio show, you guys hang around in kind of like a bullpen area.
It's a bullpen.
Couches.
Yes.
Yeah, you just kind of, laugh about what went right and laugh about what went wrong, and let's do this tomorrow. Just a casual talk, right?
Yeah.
So you guys are kind of in that setting.
Yes.
Still watching CNN because just like this weekend was a CNN weekend as far as watching.
Absolutely.
That was a CNN week when I reflect back on that. So you guys are watching that and pick it up from there.
Yeah. So the second one goes in to the other building, and as it turns out, and this is, again, just how life is, Chris's brother had stayed extra late. I mean, when you're a young guy in the financial world, you do stuff, and those guys, you may think and maybe eventually they do make a lot of money, but when you're younger, you work 100 hours a week.
Yeah, they hustle.
So he stayed late, so he slept in the next day. He slept in, and it saves his life.
Unbelievable.
And I call my good friend, I called Adam Oldfield, my good friend Adam.
Okay.
And he said he slept in, Mike. And I just start crying. I'd only met him once, but just that thing, I just start, crying, literally. And of course, there are those who had brothers and husbands, wives, sisters, you name it. And I think of all the days that the earth stood still. I remember driving home.
Yes.
There
was an eerie feeling.
It was nothing because you didn't know how much else was planned. Then the Pentagon one happens, and where the plane goes down before, that was the one coming out of was it
in the field, right?
In the field out of Pennsylvania, or whatever. Yeah. And then there's the Pentagon one that just looked like it that didn't quite it was terrible. I mean, seriously, just the most upsetting day, and I think it's why it's observed so. With a reverence that I think a lot of things aren't, that also are very, significant. I think of Remembrance Day, and I think a lot of people do a very good job of making sure that they, wear the poppies and are very respectful. But there's just such a darkness about 9/11 that I don't think, for those that were around or of a certain age, if you were too young to really sort of gravitate towards how awful that was, those of us of this age look at it as one of the worst days. So, again, between the horrific storms both in Houston and Florida, and then this has been a relatively heavy, really a month of this kind of stuff. So Just remembering that today, and again, our thoughts and prayers to the families who lost so much on that day. Where were you, Dave? Where were you? Obviously working.
Wasn't working, actually. I was in bed because at the time I was doing Sportsline with Global Sports, Global News, and our show is at 11 o'clock at night. So I'm wrapping up the night 11:30, and then of course I'm going out after because that's what you do. And
DJ Styles.
Exactly. You kind of make the transformation a la Clark Kent. So you're getting home at sometimes 2, 3 in the morning, and your day doesn't start back at the plant until 3, 4 in the afternoon. So I'm waking up at that time, and I get a phone call to turn on CNN, and I'm watching this, and it doesn't look real. It doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
It's it's because you see movies and so forth, and at the end everybody's safe and everybody's fine, right? But this is actual real life CNN. I actually go into work a little bit earlier, and there's a meeting after meeting after meeting on how to handle this. Basically, the entire newscast was taking a national feed. There wasn't going to be any sports that day because sports in that realm of things, the Bombers at the time, the Manitoba Moose at the time, that really doesn't matter. It was September 11th, so the Moose were kind of getting ready for the start of training camp because the Canucks, which were the NHL affiliate, were getting their stuff together as well. So there wasn't much happening there. The Bombers were in the thick of things because, as you remember, early 2000s, Dave Ritchie's Bombers were a very good team before they take the nosedive for the next decade. So we kind of looked for the stories of the New York-based players, or at least the university-type players, and one of them was a friend of yours, Brian Clark, who is a great linebacker for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, among other CFL teams, and he was from Hofstra, I guess.
He went to Hofstra along with Wayne Corbett.
Wayne Corbett, exactly. Yeah. So we talked to him, and just because family in the area, and having those tides and so forth. So it was a strange day because I have a tendency, or at least I had a tendency of when I was on the air, you can't help to smile because you're doing something you love, and on that day you can't smile because there's so many other things going on in the world. It's just like, and I'm not going to make the direct comparison, but on Friday, it's hard to talk about sports when there's a potential of a devastation happening in a beautiful part of our continent, with friends and family and people we don't know that don't deserve that, and it just, at that time the devastation happened and the cleanup was happening, and it was brutal. And to further that story, I actually because I used to go to New York pretty frequently. It's one of my favorite cities. I went to New York in January of the following year, so I guess that would have been 3-4 months later. And even at that time, the walking around that area and seeing the thousands, and I do mean this, thousands of workers in that vicinity. When you're talking about the World Trade Center, for anybody who hasn't been there, that's almost like saying 3 or 4, maybe 5 city blocks of Toronto has been knocked out.
Yeah.
Because that's how big that place is. There isn't anything like this in North America. And it just, and for that to fall, and for the cleanup of 100-story buildings, Twin Towers.
Twins, yeah.
That was, it was brutal. And, you walk by the memorials and you would go city blocks around the area of people pinning pictures and flowers.
I've not been to Ground Zero. I've not been to the.
I haven't been to the new one,
but I hear it's pretty heavy.
I hear it's very heavy.
Yeah. It's tough to go to. In fact, during that time too, Schwarzenegger, when he was still making movies, basically, it was called Collateral Damage.
Yep.
And it was about terrorists. They made the movie way beforehand. Like, what are you going to do? It's going to be released, and they had some real difficult choices, like, do we not release it at all, but you spend that kind of money. So they took I guess from a computer standpoint, and they get rid of the World Trade Center. They take it out of their opening shot because to have something about terrorists and then have the World Trade Center there, it was too upsetting. So they had to do a bunch of things like that. But again, we're just sort of observing 9/11 and our American friends and understanding what a heavy day indeed it is. The one thing that did get them through it, And this is, again, a tribute to the kinds of people they are, especially New Yorkers. They turned immediately to sports. It wasn't in a way that was perceived as being callous. What they were saying was that you're not going to change our way of life. And we're going back to Yankee Stadium. We're going back to, well, at the time, was it the Met? I'm trying to think of what it would have been at that time.
Shea Stadium.
It would have been still Shea at that time.
Yep.
So they were showing the rest of the world that our life will not be changed the way that you want us to change, and so sports became a big part of it. So it was a big part. It was a big part of yesterday in understanding not only what was coming the following day, but quite honestly, all those that were tied to the storms in Florida. So I'll start with.
Well, it's funny. Let me just bring that one point because it's sports related, and you talk about it. 2001, and I'll never forget this. And I'll never remember another first pitch because they have the ceremonial first pitches. I'll never forget George Bush throwing out the first pitch of the 2001 World Series game. It was Game 3, and he throws out the pitch, and you sit there, and we're not Americans. We're not. But before this happens, you're praying it's a strike.
Yeah.
And the guy nails a strike, and it's almost like the country starts to celebrate that ceremonial first pitch by a president. I'll never forget that.
It's
Mike.
kind of, Dave, it's the victory of their way of life. That's really what they were saying. And again, this is why people are like, well, so what is it on a Sunday? Now, I tweeted out yesterday. It's really weird on the first day of the NFL to be sitting around not thinking about the NFL, because I wasn't. I was thinking about my cousin Kevin, and of course everything worked out okay. He made the right call.
Fantastic.
But guys like Sean Salisbury, like, amen, brother. Here's a guy who made his living and still does to a degree with the National Football League. And then eventually, you see that it gets a little bit slower. You know that Naples, and we'll look at some of the pictures later on in the show and some of the footage that we have from that. But it was about let's try to concentrate on football. In Houston, they had a very difficult job. But I'm going to start with the Dallas game. If we're starting with last night's the Sunday nighter. Ezekiel Elliott gets to play in this game. Odell Beckham does not. And for Witten, now did he become the leading all-time receiver? I'm trying to think of or touchdown leader last night. But when you got a Jason Witten, again, we're talking about those big, tight end type guys that, how important is it in today's NFL to have something like that? Who's covering him? Because the guy actually's got. It's not like he's fast, but it's like Gronk.
Yeah, it's almost like the original Gronk, just not as big, not as bulky and powerful.
Yeah.
But man, this guy's a grinder, and this guy's been in the league for over a decade. So
and Dallas looked good.
They did. They look really good. They surprised me. I had the Giants on a lot of my tickets, plus the 4 points. It went up to 6 points at kickoff.
I thought you took the Cowboys last weekend.
No, I took the Giants plus the points. Giants 5-0 against the spread the last 5 games against Dallas. 6-2 in Dallas. Won both games last year. Dak Prescott's completion percentage under 50% against the Giants last year, and this was an embarrassment of an offense for the New York Giants.
Terrible.
You're missing you're missing your star receiver, but you have a young tight end. You have Brandon Marshall. You have a running back that really wasn't utilized last year, and Eli Manning. Does he have any gas left in the tank? Because it just doesn't seem like there is any gas, and I'm so surprised by it because I thought there should be more out of a Giants team that actually has a reasonably good defense.
I think Peyton, at least I was told. I didn't see it myself, but was Peyton Manning at the game?
Yeah, he was at the game seeing little brother, and of course, Peyton's doing a lot of football sites and so forth, and it's funny because you see him and you're like, well, why the hell isn't he on our show? And it's like, of course, Peyton Manning joins us this morning. Good morning, Peyton. You saw little brother yesterday.
I did. And I just want to say, if I can stop you there, see, what people don't understand, y'all don't understand about Eli, is that he's terrible.
But he has more Super Bowls than you.
Well, yeah, okay. Well, probably Farrah Fawcett's got some more stuff. You know what I mean? Because I thought that was good. No, she's dead. I understand that. But Eli, he was never that talented. You take a look at the weapons that he didn't have. It doesn't matter because Odell Beckham, that little thief, or whatever he does, he steals, right? So even if he comes back, you got one weapon. So he's not going to win every game for it. So they also need to run the game, Dave. I mean,
That's true.
If Rita McNeil were still alive, you know what I'm saying? I mean, that's have that big girl run downhill. That's what I'd say. The other thing, too, is while we're talking about not very good, Andy Dalton. I mean, poor Opie yesterday, really. He's got to stop eating Aunt Bee's pie. All right, that came out wrong. That's not what I meant.
We get the idea.
Who else was bad? Oh, Russell Wilson. I mean, I'm this, I'm that. Really? Because I didn't see it yesterday. Aaron Rodgers was truly, he was something. But Russell Wilson in Seattle, which, by the way, most irritating team in the league.
It is, isn't
League
it?
of Boom. You mean more like the league of not that great.
Whoa,
Yeah,
that's good too. That's good. Okay. So we're talking about some of the good and the bad. The Cleveland Browns look like they were interested in playing some football. Are we going to see a better Cleveland Brown team this year?
Well, you knew that game was going to be close, and I thought they kept themselves in it. And Ben Roethlisberger, who how about this? The winningest quarterback in the Cleveland building doesn't play for Cleveland. I'm like, can you imagine? I just hope Ben didn't go to some university or something, drop a couple of magic little drops in a girl's drink or something. You know what I mean? Because he's a bit of a horn dog. This is raw Mike Richards, so I have this big winger hanging out and get some sort of a chumbly job. Is that what you say? Blow job or whatever. Yeah. Great being on the show, by the way. Thanks. I didn't mean that thing about Aunt B. I was wrong.
Thanks, Peyton.
It's great to have Peyton by. I was a little surprised at that comment.
A little bit.
Panthers, they look pretty good, but you're playing the 49ers. I don't know exactly what we take from that, but I will say that the kind of offensive philosophy that you're going to see from Cam Newton. Now, for those that where did he go generally, do you think, when it came to the fantasy world? Where was he, do you think, in terms of quarterbacks?
Well, Cam Newton's the kind of quarterback that goes a little bit higher than you think, just because he has those the double attacks as far as being able to run the ball. A lot of times, if they're in the red zone within the 10-yard line, he'll call his own number, and you want your quarterback to score his own touchdowns because you're going to gain a lot more fantasy value. I think his numbers will decline this year just because they do have a dual threat in the backfield. This was a nice little test for them as far as just getting your feet wet. It's always nice opening up against a San Francisco. You just you work out the kinks of the preseason, and now it's on to week 2, you got that one win under your belt. I look for big things from the Panthers. I'm not going to say they're playoff bound, but they're better than what they were last year. And last year they were 6-10.
Yeah, there's going to be some survival to this offense as well. So you can see, as you said, not as many running plays for him running in the end zone. Not that he won't.
Nope.
I mean, not that he won't, but it's going to be less.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, for example, yesterday he ran the ball 6 times. Traditionally, he'll get anywhere between 8 and 10 touches.
Yeah.
So it wasn't vintage Newton, but if you're the Carolina Panthers and you're part of that coaching staff, you don't want Cam taking too many hits.
You don't. You don't. So it's a smart thing to do. I also thought the Packers look really good, but they look good defensively.
Which is surprising because that's not textbook Green Bay Packers.
Well, generally, unless we're talking about the teams from the 1960s, I'm not talking about the defense of the Pack because that's really, I mean, if you go back even probably, I guess, to the Brett Favre era, they probably were going to try to outscore you and stop you enough. But they really got after it. But I think really, Dave, to a degree, I think what they smelled in the water was a really porous offensive line for the Seattle Seahawks. I think Russell Wilson is a good quarterback. He's a great athlete. I'm not sure necessarily what they see in their running game just as yet, but you better figure it out because if they don't get some help soon, this is the NFL. Everyone's in the dark room. They're all going to see exactly what happened on that day, and Russell Wilson's going to have a real tough time running an offense when he's running for his life.
Yeah, absolutely it was. And not a very good stat if you're a Seahawks fan waking up this morning and Russell Wilson was your leading ball carrier with 2 carries for 40 yards. That is not supposed to happen when you have a guy like Eddie Lacy who came over in free agency last year, did nothing against his ex-team, 5 carries, 3 yards. That is just no show against a team that basically said, you know what, we don't want you on our team. See you later.
I took the try bet on that. That's right. 6 points either way.
Yes.
I'm going, it's nothing.
No. I know.
And I'm like, oh, this is a field goal game.
It should have been too.
All they had to do is get a field, but they just didn't allow it to happen. And you're right. I think Seattle, for all those that thought they were Super Bowl bound or whatever, football is played with an offensive line. If you don't have one, you can have the greatest quarterback in the world, and it really won't matter. And the coaches are really good. Here's a couple of things, too, that happened, I thought, yesterday. If we're looking at coaching jobs, the Giants' coaching job, that's a massive fail. Mm-hmm. I mean, you just didn't figure it out. Without your obviously your number one guy, and obviously the offense that runs around, they create plays for Odell Beckham. But that's like, those arguments you have with Montreal Canadian fans or about the Canadians, which is, when Carey Price is out, that's fine. But when Carey Price is in, what is he going to score goals too? Like at some point, you can't just be one-dimensional. I thought they looked one-dimensional. I think that I guess if I'm taking a look at other fails. The Patriots, I'm not going to, even though it was a Thursday nighter, I just think that they're probably going to be a little better than that. And the one reason I think we're seeing some of these fails, Dave. Okay, so if we're talking about pass and fails. I'm going to be I'll do a little music as we go into this.
I got some fails.
Here's pass and fails. Listen to this. Ooh. And now it's time for Pass or Fails. NFL style. On rawmickrichards.com. All right, Dave, pass and fail. So if we're taking a look at, let's talk about the fails first. So we did mention, who we start? We said Seattle was a fail.
Yep, Seattle was a fail because of that offensive line. The Giants a fail because of the offensive line. And funny that two teams that a lot of people thought were going to be significant players, and we're not ruling them out yet, but week one, not a great way to start off with two fails from two teams that should be contenders in the NFC.
Who else you got failing this week?
Failing this week, I got the Arizona Cardinals. They had this game won and decided to let the Detroit Lions score 20 points against them in the fourth quarter.
Terrible.
Carson Palmer, 3 interceptions in this one. He looked like the Carson Palmer that was playing for the Cincinnati Bengals at the end of his career. That was complete garbage. Now, I had the Lions to win this anyway, but I'm looking at this game going, what are you doing? Just the way the Lions actually started off, and we know that the Cardinals don't travel properly.
No, they don't.
But Lions side of things, Matthew Stafford, fantastic game. Did it with no running attack. If the Lions are going to do anything and threaten the Packers for that division, you can't have your leading rusher racing for 30 yards on 15 carries, because that's telling you something that if you're going to play the Lions offense, just shut down that receiving core, because God knows they're not going to run the ball on you, and you have to run the ball. You have to run the ball soon, and as the weather gets colder and colder, the running attack has to get better and better. Something has to improve there on Detroit, but fail for the Cardinals right now, not taking advantage of a massive opportunity.
I agree 100%. And we talked about that going into this game about how they travel. To me, this was almost, in some ways, their vintage failure.
Yep.
They tend to do this from time to time. Sometimes they win games that they shouldn't, and the other way around. They always end up being, to me, mediocre for a team that sometimes brags about having a really staunch record, great at home. But you know what? I don't buy it. If you can't go in and maybe not even blow out necessarily the Lions, but you should be walking away with at least a touchdown win, I thought. So that, to me, is a massive fail. If I'm looking at fails, oops, what happened to that?
Jeez, that was a quick song.
Oh, come on.
Got to give us more.
Let's go back to failure music.
Now, I don't want to be too critical on this, Mike, when we talk about our second failure, or I guess our third failure, but thanks for showing up, Houston Texans.
That's
I know
why
there's a lot of things on the mind and so forth.
But defensively, they were bad. Defensively.
Exactly. Like I expect Tom Savage, a quarterback, not to do well, or at least have a hard time, quote unquote, managing an offense. But come on, defensively speaking, to allow 30 points against Jacksonville. I know Jacksonville's on the rise, and they got that nice stud running back who did really well. Fournette, 26 carries, 100 yards. He's already going to be my rookie player of the year, so mark on that. But right now, when you're at home and everything that's happened to that state and especially that city, to not put an effort right out of the gate, that's disappointing to me.
How bad was the Redskins' performance?
At home too.
That is
division rival.
You're taking a look at a second-year quarterback in the Eagles, but Carson Wentz is going to be, I think, at some point stand out. I'm not saying right now he's an elite quarterback. Obviously, I'm not. But I'm saying for the job he did for Washington, I think that's a little bit embarrassing in a NFC East where with suspensions, with Odell Beckham out, with Ezekiel Elliott eventually we assume is going to be out. It might be a little bit open, and this was a huge fail to me on day number 1.
Yeah, Kirk Cousins, a QBR of 34.8%. That's just terrible. You look at that, and you look at the missed opportunities. The team loses by 13 points at home when a lot of odds makers were going, okay, this is a pick'em game, which is already an insult to a team that had a better record than the Eagles last year. You look at that division, and you look at the Cowboys, the Giants, the Eagles, and the Redskins. If you're the Redskins, where the hell are you getting wins if you're not able to handle the Eagles at home on week number 1? This might be the last place team in that division, and I think we can mark it right now that Washington will be 4th out of 4 teams.
In terms of another failure coaching staff wise, and the reason I say coaching staff, when you realize someone's not going to play like we knew with the Indianapolis Colts, you knew that Andrew Luck was not going to play. It's announced. It's not a huge surprise. The best that you can do is get completely obliterated by the Rams 46-9. So I can't take away a whole bunch from this game because it's not like I think the Rams are going to go to the Super Bowl, but I can tell you who's not, and that's the Indianapolis Colts. That was brutal.
Yeah, that was really brutal. You look at that, and I understand the no-show because of what's on the offensive side of things, and when you're losing maybe the only franchise piece you have, because the defense isn't very good to begin with. The offense is okay when Andrew Luck is in there, and when he's not, it's downright terrible. And you know what the funny thing about this is, too? Chuck Pagano crediting the 49ers, even though he played the Los Angeles Rams, crediting the 49ers in a post-game press conference where I'm almost thinking, okay, slip of the tongue, that happens a lot to me doing this show, but if you're the coach and you're preparing for a team all week and you use that word 49ers, it's kind of going to be one of those clips that you use when this guy's going to be fired in the next 6 weeks, because Chuck Pagano is my pick to be the first NFL fired coach this season.
That's another episode called Hired or Fired.
That's a good episode, too.
Coming up on TSN. See, I threw that in. It sounds like something TSN would do. Lord knows they got to do something. Okay, let's continue. How about this?
Fire.
How about the passes? How about a happier story?
Happier story.
I'll tell you what I think is sort of a pass, a little bit, considering how bad it can get, and that's probably Cleveland.
Okay.
I think the Cleveland Browns, not that these games aren't necessarily close because they are with the Steelers. It's a interdivisional game, but there's no harm in losing 21-18, at least I think in some ways, where they say there are no moral victories in professional sports. I got news for you. The Browns probably felt they got one on Sunday.
You know what? I would agree with you, and I think the Browns might actually have themselves something in the quarterback position, because when you look at the Kaiser, the Kaiser bun, he actually played well. 20 of 30, 222 yards. Touchdown and interception, ran the ball when he had to, scored a touchdown, moved the chains, played against a really competitive Steelers team that odds are will win this division, and you keep them within 3 points. That's not bad. You have to be looking at going, you know what, something to build off of here, because they haven't had much to build off of anywhere. Deshaun Kaiser's been the 27th quarterback this Browns team's had at the starting pivot position in the last 15 years. That's a lot of quarterbacks, Mike, considering in that same time the Pittsburgh Steelers have had one. And now, as you mentioned earlier, the Pittsburgh Steelers' one quarterback is the most winningest quarterback when it comes to playing games in Cleveland. That does not look good for any Cleveland quarterback in the future or past.
Well, we mentioned the fail of the Cincinnati Bengals, and that is an abysmal start. In fact, if I'm looking at Andy Dalton, who had a horrible day, maybe even the backup gets a shot. I mean, even after week number 1. Now, I know it's an unwritten rule that, your starter's your starter, and it's got to be, exceptionally bad. But they're going to have to make a call on this soon. And look, people have always kind of felt that way about Andy Dalton, which I feel bad because I kind of like the kid. But getting lit up like that. But the one thing that is true is the Ravens can still play defense, Dave. I mean, they pitch a shutout. They're not going to do it every week, and I'm not comparing it to the massive battles that we saw, real smash-mouth football between themselves and the Steelers. It is Joe Flacco a little bit older, but he was efficient yesterday, and you better be prepared that defense is coming when you play the Ravens. So, you know what? Even though it's not a huge pass, I'm still giving them a pass yesterday.
You know what? And a surprising pass, too, because I wasn't expecting that out of the Baltimore Ravens. And don't look now, but the Ravens play Cleveland next week, our favorites in that game. And then week 3, the Ravens play the Jacksonville Jaguars and our favorites in that game. So we could be sitting here after the first month of the season going, the Baltimore Ravens are perfect at 3-0. And I would have never have guessed that after
No.
3 games, considering I had this team to actually finish third in this division and maybe flirt with second. We'll see. But I had Pittsburgh and Cincinnati ranked above them. And right now, they're in the driver's seat. They actually have something going good. And it's funny because Joe Flacco only completes 9 passes yesterday for 121 yards.
Yeah.
Still pitches the shutout, wins 20-0. Nice running committee, too, between Allen and West. 151 yards rushing between the 2 backs and a touchdown. So it was the black and blue pounding of what we've seen in the past with the Ravens. And don't be surprised if this is the sort of thing that maybe happens when they face the Steelers, because that is called a point spread tie.
Well, the autumn wind is a pirate, Dave, and the Raiders go into the Titans and whip them 26-16 over a confused Marcus Mariota. But it was Derek Carr with a big day. So therefore, I give the Raiders coaching staff and the team a huge pass.
Yeah, a massive pass. And Derek Carr is going to be one of my top 3 candidates for MVP this year. And if he's going to have games like this against teams that are going to be one of those teams they're going to need to beat in the postseason, because I have the Titans going to the postseason, this is a great mark, especially on the road where the Raiders travel and people sit there and go, man, they're traveling west to east. They had no problems at all. Derek Carr just under 300 yards passing. I liked what they have with the running attack as far as Marshawn
Lynch looked good yesterday.
He did.
Yeah.
76 yards of rushing along the ground, and they had some help along the way. The 2 receivers are fantastic. If the Raiders could do anything defensively consistently, this Raiders team will challenge for a conference title.
Well, and even in the really bad years, which we've seen a lot of when it comes to the Oakland Raiders, it's their defense that always made it, remotely respectable. So they weren't losing by 3 touchdowns. Maybe they lose by 10 points, but it was, guys like when Khalil Mack and get there. I mean, it was that signature of them not being horrible. So you knew in order to turn it around, they had to find the chosen one, which they have in Derek Carr, because he's got everything. See, what I like about him, it's basically that football IQ, and he comes by it naturally. We talked about his older brother David. It's hereditary sometimes. He's got all the tools. They're going to be, I think, exactly where a lot of people were going to put them, including guys like yourself. At the beginning of the year, you said this is a team that, and again, I sort of agreed too. If we're putting New England number 1, and I still am, I'm still going to do that. I don't think it's that far or a stretch to put Oakland number 2, and when we're talking about the AFC.
Yeah, the AFC, and don't be surprised if we're sitting here talking in late January about that being a preview, and let's see where that game is actually being played, because if you're the Oakland Raiders, you want New England crossing over into California playing you at home, not the other way around, considering what sort of weather optics will be featured in New England in late January.
Okay, so we're going to take a look at tonight's games. Let's see if I can find some music just magically.
Okay, 2 games, by the way, doubleheader starting at 7 o'clock Eastern, and it starts off with a pretty nice matchup right off the top, Mike.
Right there, Dave. Okay. I don't know why I did that. So stupid. I was all excited because I found some music that sounded right. Let's talk about the New Orleans Saints. You know who's in that backfield. A child beta. He took a switch and ruthlessly beat his own child, his baby boy. What do you think of that, Dave?
I think it's...
Do you believe? Are you telling me
I think he's
that
a
you
piece of
believe
crap.
in beating children?
Oh,
Your pause, your silence said it all. Dave Bastel.
Don't think I was silent, but man, return of Adrian Peterson to
Let
Minnesota.
me ask you this.
Fire
a
away.
preposterous question.
Yes, those are the best.
Have
kind.
you ever beaten your brother, Michael?
No. Yes, I have.
Right there.
I-
Right there. Dave Bastel has said it. Beating his own sibling mercilessly in
Why?
Winnipeg, Alberta.
but then it all changes at around age 16 when my brother
Yeah,
gains about 4 inches of height on me, and it's like, hey, now we're friends.
And then he became, as I like to call it, an abomination. We weren't expecting that today. A little Howard Cosell.
I wasn't.
A couple of surprise guests there today.
Yeah.
It will be really interesting, obviously, considering they're playing Minnesota. I just don't know what to expect because you know what? Once you get north of 32 as a running back, how much do you really have left? And then there'll be sort of the emotion of what happened beforehand, even though, look, we're in the business. We kind of tend to let those things go. But I think nonetheless, I think it will be it will be of note tonight. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it will be. In both games, the 7 and the 10 o'clock game, 3-point favorites for the home side. So basically what Vegas is saying is, because it's when you're setting up a mark for what kind of chalk you're going to use for the two teams, the first thing that happens is the home team gets 3 points. If you don't see a difference between anything like that, it stays. If you do, well, it gains or it subtracts and so forth. So what Vegas is saying right here is the Vikings and the Broncos in these two games are what they're supposed to be, 3-point favorites because of the home field. I actually like the Vikings in this game. It's a comparison of two different quarterbacks almost on opposite ends, where Drew Brees will be airing everything out and using all parts of the dome, and Sam Bradford will be throwing 5-yard outs. So we'll see what happens with that. I expect that it could be a high-scoring game just because of what the Saints have to offer, averaging over 30 points per game last season. I expect them to be the same, but in that same Saints mentality, they'll also allow 30 points a game because this defense isn't very good. Minnesota, nice defense, okay offense. That's why I give them the edge there. Look for Dalvin Cook, by the way, in the Minnesota backfield, replacing AP. He's the heir apparent to the throne. If everything works out well in Minnesota, this guy is who we'll be talking about for the next 6-7 years.
Drew Brees in high school broke every single state record they had in Texas. Guess which school doesn't recruit him?
The actual state team, yeah.
Ends up being a Boilermaker. How did you miss on that one? So maybe what I'll do, depending on what happens tonight.
Too short, I guess, right? He's only 5'11".
Yeah, I guess that was it. Charlie Whitehurst. I'm trying to think of who they actually did go after. Whoever it is, it certainly wasn't Drew Brees. And I think what I'm going to do is we mentioned obviously off the top of the show my time with the team 1050.
Yes.
I phone. I do this bit where I call San Diego when they're talking about changing Doug Flutie and putting in Drew Brees ahead of him. And my response and my phone call to the organization as I recorded it live on air, followed by the song The Flutie Salvation Show as done by Neil Diamond, and played the whole thing. So you know what? I'm going to try to find that tomorrow. Try to do it video style so we can actually play. But to me, Drew Brees, it's funny that you mentioned Doug Flutie. Of the guys that I just love everything about them, their competitive nature, they are certainly cerebral enough to, well, more than cerebral. I think his lingo, I don't know if you've ever seen it, where he starts breaking down and talking what the plays are and how he calls them. It's another language. Like, it's genius. You've got to be almost a genius. In fact, people were talking about why can't you find more quarterbacks? I don't know what it was. One of the channels. I'm not sure what station it was on. Or I don't think it wasn't an American one. They're like, how come you can't find more quarterbacks? Because it's the world's toughest position to play in all of sport.
Yep.
And look, I've played a lot of them. I've coached a lot of them. I've talked to those who, in professional levels, the ability to make those decisions. And all the decisions that you could make as you're reading a defense, as you have less than 3 seconds or whatever it is, to then maybe even change that call and find a guy. You have to have that IQ, that cerebral nature, the football sense to be able to do it. I'm not saying that you're on the Wonderlic, you score 1,000, but you have to have something going. And Drew Brees to me is one of those guys. I love watching him play. But we'll try to get that the Drew Brees phone call in tomorrow.
Yeah, Hall of Famer. On the betting lines too, Mike, just to let everybody know, because I know we do a sprinkling of that, and what I mean by that is the exact opposite. Quite the Sunday in Las Vegas sports books. All the unders. The unders went 10-2.
Yeah, you know what?
Including a big under for us with the Jets and the Bills.
Yes.
And we were on that early.
Yeah.
Also, the underdog 6-6 against the spread, including 2 of them, and one of them actually hurt me. The Bears actually got in their cover at home because that opened up at about 7. It went down to 6.5. I bought it 6.5. The Bears actually cover that number, and the Browns, of course, was a massive number. They cover 9.5. They actually come within 3 points of the Steelers.
I got 5.5 when I kick. I got 5.5
at game time.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay. Because on Saturday, 9.5 was the.
No, I'm talking about the Chicago game. I got 5.5 on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's I wish I would have got 5.5 because I had 6 and it wasn't good enough.
The Bronco game, really not interested in. I have, number one, it's going to be a little late for everybody on the East Coast.
Correct.
But of I'm going to watch the Saints-Vikings, but I
Yes.
have really almost no interest in the Chargers and the Broncos.
No, I'll see the highlights, and that's all. And
Yeah.
don't look for some major analysis tomorrow on the show
No.
because
In fact, look at that. No music for their game.
Oh.
Well, I could have some music. I could play, you know
I
what music they're getting.
I still find it hard that it's the Los Angeles Chargers.
Here's what music they're getting. Hey, it didn't do that. What the hell? Oh, that's because this thing's still on. Hold on. As I quickly do this, I go back here. I'm doing this, and here's your music. That's the music they get. You guessed it right. The shit music. There's the music for tonight's second game of the doubleheader on Monday Night Football.
It's the truth.
That's what they're getting.
Chargers, Broncos. Phillip Rivers will throw for 300 and something yards. We don't know what the Broncos have to offer
I have
on
no idea. I don't
offense
know.
because they have a running attack and that's it.
The bet I would make is on Phillip Rivers losing his patience
Ooh,
and
that's
being
good.
frustrated on the sidelines.
What do you think in first quarter?
Nah, I'm feeling it's going to come a little later when things start to sort of back up like in a toilet in about like the late third quarter. That's when I'm not saying a helmet throw because that would be worth a lot if that was a prop bet.
Oh, that would be
but,
great.
But I'm saying like freaking out on a guy or a coach or just yelling in disgust.
I could see that.
I'm going third quarter.
Okay. We'll watch for that on the highlights because neither of us will be watching the actual game.
Boy, that music is shit. Looking at things we were going to talk about on
let me
weekend.
go through.
Yeah.
Let me go through a quick list here because this will be of interest to a lot of fantasy players and bettors out there.
Okay.
J.J. Watt dislocated finger yesterday. The finger actually came out of the socket. He put it back in and says he'll tape it up and play next week. So don't worry about that.
He's not tough at all.
No, he's not tough at all. Brian Cushing, linebacker for the Texans, out with a concussion. We're not sure about that. David Johnson, wrist injury for the Cardinals. He left the game, and if he leaves the game and he's not ready for next week, they're in some big trouble because that's a major part of their offense that actually struggled in the second half. Kevin White for the Chicago Bears, their top receiver, which isn't really saying much.
Yeah.
He left the game with a shoulder injury. He is out for the season. Former first-round pick.
Or as the team likes to say, the only guy who can catch.
Yes.
It's not good.
And Keenan or Allen Robinson, a wide receiver for the Jaguars, he tore his ACL. He is out for the season. When you look at the Jacksonville attack, he was a key part of what they do on offense. So half of their receiving core as far as production out with an injury. He'll be gone and miss the entire 2017 season.
Before we changed up football, there was something that does it. Michael Keegan Peel. Is that how I say it? Keegan? He's got way too many names. Why do you have to have so many names?
Keegan Michael Key.
Yeah. Of was it the show Key and
Peele.
And Peel. Okay, so he comes up with these different characters. So he shows up on ESPN. And as I'm watching the ESPN show, there's this tall, skinny, blonde-haired kid.
Okay.
And he starts talking. And I'm like, okay, that's impossible because I'm hearing Chris Collinsworth. Like I'm not in the room, but I hear Chris Collinsworth talking. And I go out, and there's this skinny blonde-haired kid. And then I look at him like, he's got into a time machine because it looks like he's about 21. It's his son, Jack. And most of the time, you get very jealous about guys who bring, their kids walk. He's right out of university, has that job. But listen to the sound of his voice. It is unbelievable how similar he sounds. So courtesy of ESPN, the gag is, this is supposed to be, what do they call him? Hingle McCringleworth or something like this? What's the character?
Yeah, they do their fake football names.
Yeah. So that's the bit. But really, the most amazing thing about it is Jack Collinsworth because he is his dad, courtesy of our friends and property of ESPN.
We couldn't celebrate the return of celebration without speaking to the godfather of groove, the two-pump pioneer, the end zone OG, who has announced a return to the NFL.
You retired after the pushback on your double pump celebration. I think there's a lot of people wondering why something so small could take you away from the game.
Why do people go to football games? To watch people get in the end zone, your heart start pumping, you go, what are you gonna do when you get in the end zone?
After the rule changes, Hingle McCringleberry tells the world he is coming out of retirement in a Sunday NFL Countdown exclusive.
That's the excitement of the game. We ain't talking about first downs. We ain't talking about kicking the winning field goal. We talking about what they gonna do when they in the end zone. What's wrong with what I was doing? This is one. Then if I retract and pause and then drop 2 on you, that's not 3 in a row.
So you're saying if you just
1, retract, 1, 2. See, you have not done 3 pumps in a row. You did 1 pump. The retraction is what makes the whole thing null and void. 3 is a good number. 3 is the number of perfection, right?
You know what the sad thing is? It's probably not that far from the truth. And if you watch Ballers, by the way, if you're not watching Ballers, what are you watching? You've seen it this season so far, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I'm just watching the replay of it. This is fantastic.
But isn't that is crazy that he sounds that much like his dad?
He even
Unbelievable.
he even has the cadence.
Yeah, it does. The cadence is exact because and that was Jim sort of scripted a little bit. But when he was talking naturally, it is incredible. And most of the time you feel a little jealous that the guy walks in like that. But you know what? I love the sound of that voice. That was really good.
Yep.
That's a great gig for him.
What do you rank Chris Collinsworth as far as analysts are concerned?
Well, see, because a lot of people there's a lot of people who are more on who they don't like than who they like.
Yeah.
I like Chris. I like most guys who have played the game.
Yes.
And they usually have a real distinct way. It's
And Chris was an average receiver at best for the Bengals.
Better color guy.
Better
color guy. But he does. I like him.
I mean, like Al Michaels and Chris Collins.
Yeah, I think Al Michaels, and I know them. The ball is caught. That kind of stuff, right? but I do like it. I
like him.
Yeah, I like him too. There's a lot of guys. Now I'm going to draw a blank. He used to be on our show. Does the NBA? Kevin Harlan.
Yeah.
Kevin Harlan, everything always sounds exciting, even if it's not.
Yep.
He makes it sound exciting. But it's funny going back.
I'm not a big Jim Nantz guy.
Jim Nantz,
and he works with Tony Romo now.
Oh, I saw it. Yeah, I didn't see Tony.
I didn't hear Tony's game.
Jim Nantz is like a great host.
Yes.
So when he hosts like the NCAA tournament, I really, really like that. And then of course, he does a lot of the golf stuff.
Yes, I'm better on golf than football.
100%.
Yeah.
Like his best thing to me is golf.
Correct.
Just because it kind of suits his nature.
And one final question about announcers, because my a member of the family brought it up yesterday and asked, did James Brown lose like 55 pounds over the offseason, or is he feeling okay? I'm not joking.
No.
I'm not
because
trying to be...
when I'm watching it yesterday, I'm looking at it, I'm like, what's different?
Yes.
Until you just said that now, I was like, sometimes you're busy. We were doing stuff.
He's a bigger dude, and that's fine. A great voice, great delivery, but he looked like he was wearing.
He is. But you know what? That's what it was, because it never even dawned on me, because I'm looking around, looking at all. Again, some of the bets that screwed me. Wisconsin. Oh my God, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
What was that? Florida Atlantic, and you beat them 31-14.
Oof.
They scored 7 points in the second half. Yeah. Did the girlfriends play the second half? Yeah, I just said that because I got to be honest. That killed me. That one and the Hamilton Tiger Cats.
Oof.
They were a different team.
Yep, completely different team.
And for Ottawa, Harris is going to be out now for at least a couple of weeks.
Drew Tate will take snaps for the.
Drew Tate looked pretty good.
That bad.
Yeah, he looked pretty good. Yep. But I'm telling you, if you're crossing over in the West, you're not hating it. I don't know who's going to stop you. Banjo Bowl, though, we talked about that too. That was pretty good.
That was fantastic.
In another beautiful stadium. Oh my God, that looked great.
Yeah, it was a nice home and home, because you look at that and you go, lots of noise in Regina, lots of noise in Winnipeg, and if you're watching the CFL or paying attention to anything we're saying here, because we're probably shooting about 85% when it comes to CFL, these teams split. And that's just the way
That's just kind of how it always is. By the way, Calgary winning that nail biter against Edmonton. Boy, that's got to hurt. Ouch. So close. And yet, wah, 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 and then when the game's over, you still live in Edmonton. So, womp, womp.
Agreed.
Okay, so as weird as it is to find the lighter side of a hurricane,
what do you do?
Somehow there is. Now, there's a bunch of crazy stuff people are doing. Once again, my cousin Kevin Bowers decided to stay. It was the good call. But, of course, the storm, not only does it slow down a little bit, but it goes on the other side of Florida. It goes to the Gulf side, on the west side. Now, the Keys got it pretty bad. Naples got it pretty bad. We'll look at some of those pictures. But generally, when you're doing the man on the street stuff, you come up to people, and they're pretty pretty casual, right? They talk about their life. They talk about, where they live, what has happened to their family, a real honest sort of guy in the street feel. In this case, now, is this courtesy of who? Is this CNN? Who's this from? It's probably CNN. I'm not sure the news agency, but they somehow.
No, this was Fox.
This is Fox.
Yes.
Okay, so property of Fox. This poor guy, this reporter, runs into the world's smartest man.
Let us ask you a question. What do you think about the storm, the risk to your own safety at this point?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
What do you think about the storm, the power, the ferocity, and the risk to your own safety at this point?
Well, at this point, I'm very relieved to discover that as we speak, the eye of the storm is practically due south of us by 220 miles, okay, because it's crossing the 80th meridian, which is 80 degrees west longitude.
Yeah.
So I'm not so worried because it's so far away. And its bearing as of 8 p.m.
Westbound.
Well, not just westbound. It was 275 degrees.
Yeah.
That's only
What?
1/15 above due west toward true north.
Is he right?
So
Yeah.
this thing is moving and has been moving in a very westerly direction. And because it's several hundred miles south, the risks are...
Watch how quickly he'll get out of this guy.
I don't think it's going to
Look,
get
he
much
wants to
worse
leave.
than what we're seeing right here.
Thanks.
Thanks. Because the producer in his earpiece is going, get rid of this guy. Get rid of him.
He's way smarter than
Yeah.
you.
Find
Don't ask him any questions.
Find someone who's crying.
That guy.
The 80th meridian because it's 1/15 of the... Okay, I gotta run. But thanks, Mr. Science. I don't want that guy. No.
usually you run across when you're doing streeters. They're called streeters in the news. It's like, I'm scared. It's like perfect
Yeah.
clip. Okay, let's go with that.
I was walking down the street with my wife, and I looked at my houses, and all of a sudden it'd be gone. Ain't in my house. Does it make you sad? Yeah, I cried and everything. Thank you. That's what you want.
You weren't
Tell them about my jewelry collection. Yeah, she lost all her jewels that we got at Walmart. Said jewels right on it. Now, when you look at some of the pictures, and again, not compared to like St. Martin, but I think this is Fort Lauderdale that you're going to see right here. And Fort Lauderdale, again, this is just footage. You can roll this. It's the winds that you're seeing that were so devastating, and I think for those like my cousin John. It's, by the way, that thing about me calling my cousin Kevin my favorite cousin has caused a whole big thing in our family, especially on Facebook. John's wife goes on and says, "Oh, it doesn't matter because my brother's name is also Dave. John's favorite cousin is Dave, always has been. So it's created a bunch of trouble. Also, what are we showing here next? Okay, here's a guy who. And maybe you've seen this one before.
Okay, fire away.
How these guys gauge the wind? This can't be the way it's done. This can't be. This is nuts. What? Like that's look at. Like you could die doing this. Because those winds, they're like I think during the surge. Anywhere between 120 and what, like 130 miles per hour. That's nuts.
He lost his goggles too. That's awesome. I'd like to try that as long as I was in a safe area afterwards. But you can't really pick that sort of thing.
No. Now Naples, a lot of people I've spent a couple of weeks there too. It's where I think it's the second richest neighborhood. I think it's called Mount Royal. That's where Tiger Woods and Bon Jovi, all those guys are in there.
Yep.
This is Naples on the weekend. And apparently what has happened here is it's being reported that it wasn't really the rich houses that got it. It was the less fortunate houses that got it that weren't very good. Once again, it sucks to be poor. That's what I took away from that. Do we have anything else on, I think, in terms of the storm?
It's funny because you look
Oh,
at
this part, Dave.
the palm trees bend and
Just bent right over.
and the cables, the wire cables look like they're doing double Dutch the way it's spinning
Exactly.
so much.
This is disgusting and not surprising. I understand. It's not like this is going to be groundbreaking. This happened. But when you see it like this, because, of course, every phone has a camera on it.
Sure
Every
it
phone
does.
has a camera on it. So you don't realize that as you're ripping off a store, and what are you stealing? It's not food. You know, sometimes I almost give you a little bit of a pass if your family's hungry and you break into a store because you've got little girls and stuff.
I'll subscribe to
if you
that,
did
yep.
that, I'm going, okay, you know, it's not perfect, but the guy's getting food for his family. I don't have a problem with it. Since when is it a necessity during a hurricane to steal Air Jordans? Now, the camera, as you can see, it's taking all the license plates. And for those who looks like they have stolen before, they're wearing hoodies over the face so you can't see them. But the other people are just so excited to be stealing these shoes from, and I think it's Foot Locker. Look at them. They can't get enough of this stuff.
Unreal.
What do you do with these people? See, look at this. Look at them just running in. That's a great example of what you want your children to like. How do you even? I don't know. Again, not surprising that it happens, but I'm just disgusted that it did. So, like, I think for the fullest extent of the law, that they should be prosecuted, like every single one of them.
Yep. Absolutely. Even maybe to a higher degree, considering the tragic circumstances that it's actually happening at that time and where they're located. So it's, that's
the of all the footage that we saw, that was the worst footage.
Yeah, that is the worst footage. Good footage and we don't have the footage, but I'll tell you about it. As far as kids are concerned, Marissa celebrating a soccer championship. No coincidence that in her first year of organized sports, baseball championship, soccer championship. So she's doing well so far, Mikey.
Was
to do some of the coaching.
Was Marv Albert? Was he at that game?
Marv Albert was not there, but you know what? If Marv Albert was there, I think we'd welcome him doing the play-by-play, considering they won the game 4-0, and it was in total control from start to finish. But I think he was doing some football.
Actually, Dave, you're wrong. It is Marv Albert, as I was doing the game, as the name of the team was
We don't know because it's a sponsor.
Sally's, defeating Bayern Munich, a score of 4-0. Goals by Sally, Washika, Ingrid, and Tony.
Oh, jeez.
Spelled with an I. Yes. Their next opponent is Borussia Dortmund.
Oh, wow. They got a tough draw.
For 3. Okay, I don't even know why we did that. That was so stupid.
No.
That's so stupid. Why?
Was Marv doing any of the games?
Dave, I'm not. You're not. I'm not doing it. I just don't want. You don't even want to do it. We're getting the hell. Yeah, let's get out of here. Yeah. Well, is that Jimmy Stewart I see walking into the room?
You want to go do karate in the garage? Yup. It's time.
Well, thanks for joining us here today. Hopefully you've subscribed, as I see people are, on the YouTube channel. Hit that little red button. And we'll be pleased that you did. Also subscribe to rawmikeRichards.com. And I got to tell you, tomorrow is a very significant part of the history for rawmikeRichards.com. We have some guests and a massive announcement. Safe to say that even though we're at 234 King Street East from the Pacific Junction Hotel, in that manner, that's the last time I'll be saying it like that. Something special. Something special in the air, Dave.
Oh, I love air specials.
Yes. Coming up tomorrow. Join us on rawmikeRichards.com.
Churn the butter.
No, not today, Dave.